and take you straight to this breaking news story that you see there on your screen. The first group of South African men who were trapped in Russia have now arrived home. 19 men, mostly from KwaZulu-Natal, were allegedly lured to Russia, if you will recall, under false pretenses and subsequently deployed to the front lines of the war in Ukraine. Now, they left the country in July last year. For the past 7 months, their families made desperate pleas to the government to assist in securing their safe return. Let's get the very latest now from our reporter at Tambo International Airport, Khayelihle Khumalo. Khayelihle, a very good afternoon to you. This is, of course, an extraordinary development to the story. So, for context, we understand that only 4 of the South African men who left the country under those false pretense of bodyguard training or counterintelligence training in Russia, only to find themselves in that war-torn Donbas region, are now just minutes away from touching down on South African soil. What are you seeing there right now at the airport? Is there visible government or even police presence? Talk to us about what you know so far.
Well, very much so. This is a very massive development to this story, Unathi. As you know, that this was a major turning point when South African President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke to his Russian counterparts, Vladimir Putin. There was an undertaking that there'll be a safe return of these South Africans who went to Russia. And you're absolutely right. So far, the number that has been confirmed is 4. And we certainly do believe as well that Unathi aircraft EK763 just touched down here in Tambo International Airport. It's really a culmination of a very lengthy process, especially for the families who have been pleading with the South African authorities to make sure that these South Africans are brought back home, especially given the very enormity of this conflict. So now, Unathi, we're still waiting for them to go through the immigration process. As you know, that it really takes time, but it's a very sensitive operation as well. As you know, that there are some South Africans who are still in Donbas. It's a very, very precarious point, especially because we know that that part of Ukraine has been essentially taken over by the Russian Federation. But once again, Unathi, pointing to the whole issue of how some certain countries here in the African continent and other parts of the world, where some nationalities have been recruited to be part of this war, and obviously it's always just them being lured to come for military training, for bodyguard training, and there has been quite a lot of developments here in South Africa, a lot of stories proceeding to this point. I mean, we saw in December last year where those 5 people were arrested right here at Tambo International Airport. Those are alleged recruiters, Unathi, and that matter is currently before court. And also we know that, Unathi, when it comes to the Military Assistance Act in South Africa, it precludes people from just undertaking or just being part of any conflict without any authorization from the South African government. So where we're positioned, Unathi, it is a vantage point from the international arrivals here at Tambo, and we're expecting these 4 to come through here. So we do understand from our sources that they'll be taken to the special immigration point, and subsequent to that, then they'll be taken to Tambo International Airport's SABC police station. As to where exactly they'll be taken to, it remains to be seen at this point. But this is quite a very massive development to this story, Unathi, but also a very agonizing period as well for the families, predominantly from KwaZulu-Natal, who have been calling on South African authorities to step in and make sure that their loved ones are returning in South Africa. But also what we do understand is that if these 4 intentionally or knowingly they left the country knowing that they're going to a conflict point, then automatically they may face arrest. But we do know that if they were duped or lured and really deceived or hoodwinked in this instance, we really don't know the circumstances. But we do understand that the members of SABC are right here. They are stationed here. In fact, one of them has gone inside to make sure that they're really just taken out. So it's been quite a very lengthy process that has culminated to this day, Unathi.
Absolutely, Kai. I mean, you mentioned quite a number of things, and I want us to provide then that context for our viewers, particularly mentioning that flight number EK763. That, of course, is an Emirates flight. I'm looking at their chart now, arriving at 16:24. So you're quite right. It has touched down. It is now 16:54. And quite importantly, as we were looking at, some of the reports from those distress calls, some of the men did indicate they went via Dubai before they ultimately reached some of these regions in Eastern Europe. And I mean, I want us to then track back to 7 months ago, 8 July 2025, when those reports started coming through that at least 18 or 19 men leaving South Africa, believing that they are to receive bodyguard training in Russia. At the time, of course, it was alleged for the MK party, one of the men confirming that Duduzile Zuma Sambudla was one of the recruiters. Of course, she's gone to deny that, also stepping down from her political duties at the MK party. Another of the men had also believed that he was to receive counterintelligence and bodyguard training. Earlier in our introduction, we talked about how for the past 7 months, families made those desperate pleas to the government to assist to secure their safe return, which is why I wanted to ask you in terms of who is there from an authority perspective. Also, interestingly, Kai, it would be wonderful to know if there's any indication that medical or even psychological support teams are on standby, just given that there were those distress calls, as we've been mentioning, in November last year. There were also reports that one of the men was reportedly wounded, but his whereabouts at the time were unknown. I mean, a lot of time has passed since then.
Well, absolutely not. It's been quite a very long process that has reached this point. So in terms of the authorities, we do understand that the members of SABC are right inside the precincts. In fact, one of the officers has gone to the other side where we're not allowed to go to. But essentially, this is a story that has really just captivated the entire country, Unathi. Especially also, we know that when it comes to so many countries in the African continent, where we know of the presence of the Wagner Group, how they've just been on this recruitment drive in so many parts of the world, including the African continent tonight, especially given the ties with the Russian Federation, where quite a number of nationalities, whether you're looking at Zimbabweans, some nationals from Botswana, but others from Kenya. I mean, recently we saw a very disturbing incident in Kenya where one of the nationalities really unfortunately also was part of this recruitment drive. Obviously, I mean, Wagner does have these footprints spread across the continent. And the family, they were saying that they were not able to bury this particular person. So essentially, they had to just dig up the grave and really have a mock funeral, as it were. But where we're positioned, Unathi, really, we're expecting them to walk across here. I mean, obviously, it's been quite a very long process. And like you just said, Unathi, I mean, this is not a new story. This is a very old story, really, that has really affected those families, predominantly from KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, on numerous occasions, Unathi, they've had those media briefings where they've been pleading with authorities to step in, and also just to look at, just when you look at the timelines of this story, you go back also to that particular undertaking when really this issue was raised last year, where the South African government made this particular undertaking to have an investigation, especially given the very high unemployment rate here in South Africa in the context of this country, where you do have a lot of young stars. So that's why it was really premised in terms of the investigation. So then you have today, we're still keenly waiting. In terms of other branches, Unati, one would have expected the Department of International Relations to be here and other entities to be here from the States, but they're not here. So we do understand that SABC is here, but also the Hawks are right here. But something that is very interesting here in this regard, Unati, is that, we saw those reports really just pointing to Miss Sambuda Zuma, and really just we saw her resigning from Parliament. But certainly we'll keep you posted during the course of the afternoon, Unati. With that, back to you in studio.
Right, Khaya, will definitely be coming back to you in a moment. Of course, aircraft EK763 having landed at OR Tambo International Airport.